up, everybody, and welcome into the H&M Trucking Podcast, episode 66. I'm your host, Marcus. So glad to have you here today. Thank you all for stopping by, and thank you all for clicking that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton, so make sure you make a little bit of use of that thing. A lot of people have asked me, like, why would I subscribe to it? Like, I don't want to pay any money for it. Hey, it's free. All you got to do is touch the subscribe button. I'm not asking for your credit card. If you want to pay for this thing, I'll give you my Venmo and you can shoot me cash straight into my pocket. How's that sound? You don't have to worry about paying a dime for this podcast. That's all taken care of. But if you hit that subscribe button, what it's going to do is tell you every single time we pump out a new episode. And of course, those of you that have been listening for a long time know it's every single Wednesday at 5 a.m. Central. But if you click that subscribe button, you'll get that reminder. And if your short-term memory is anything like mine, which is that of a fruit fly, then this will really help you, okay? I would honestly never listen to most of the new episodes of most of my favorite podcasts if I didn't get the subscriber notification, hey, there's a new episode. So take that into consideration. You know, if you're already subscribed to a lot of podcasts, I get it. It's a lot of notifications, but think about it. Like, this is your podcast. This is your company putting me out here on the air to talk to you, the employee, and just, you know, make this podcast really feel like it's your own. So click that subscribe button because it helps us out. And I bet you wouldn't know that we are an international podcast, all right? How's this for a murderer's row of countries that are checking out the H&M Trucking Podcast? This is from the month of June. United States, of course, dominating the numbers. We didn't have any question there. Then we got our brothers to the north, Canada, checking in. We've got listeners from Switzerland, Colombia, Germany, India, Pakistan, Singapore, Spain, France, the United Kingdom, Mauritius, and Zimbabwe. I don't even know if I pronounced Mauritius. I don't know where that country is. I couldn't point it out on a map. I don't even know if I'd get you in the right continent. Point is, people are listening to the H&M Trucking Podcast, and we appreciate every single one of you for doing so. Clicking that subscribe button would help us out even more. And of course, if you leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you listen on, that would be helpful too. I see here, I've got a lot of people on Apple Podcasts. The reviews on Apple really help us. I've got iHeartRadio and Spotify, also places where positive reviews will really help us. A ton of you guys tune in from Google Chrome. That's cool. Safari as well, the Podbean app. I've got listeners on Pandora, Podcast Addict, Audible, iTunes, Google Podcasts, which isn't even a thing anymore. Listen, all you have to do here is help me out once, and I won't ask you for it again. Now, you'll hear me ask the other people that haven't helped before about it many times over, but that's very obvious. This is part of doing a podcast, is trying to promote it to the people that are listening. So, all that said, and it was a mouthful, like it always is from me, go click the subscribe button. Leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice if you would. It would help us out immensely. All right. All the homework is done. I like to get it out of the way quick so we can play. And what are we playing with today? Well, we are going to touch base again with driver-dispatcher relations. And before, we've kind of talked about it from the driver side of things. Hey, drivers, what do you need from your dispatchers? How do you go about building good relationships with them? What types of things are you looping your dispatchers in on that are happening during your day so that they can stay abreast of the situation and make sure that anything you need from them is taken care of lickety-split? Well, now we're going to talk to the other side of the coin, and I'm very excited because here, right around the corner, we're going to have Steve Walahoski, we're going to have Terry Michaelson, we're going to have Lindsay Goodin, and we're going to have Tim Gray in with us. It's a big round table with dispatchers, driver managers, and division managers, and we are just going to talk about, you know, boundaries, mostly. Not mostly, but a lot of it's going to be about boundaries, because when we decided to do this episode, one thing that Eve told us was, hey, drivers and dispatchers develop relationships like family. They end up being like brother and sister, or brother and brother, or sister and sister a lot of the times. But there's an important thing in those types of working relationships that you have with people, and those are boundaries. And sometimes the boundaries can be stepped over. And that doesn't only happen from driver to dispatcher. That definitely happens from dispatcher to driver as well. We all know that you may have been woken up in your sleeper at some point in time, and that maybe got under your skin a little bit. Well, we're going to hear about the dispatchers and how they try to parse that out and handle it throughout the course of their day. What are some boundaries that are important? What are some things that can be called about at 3 a.m? And what are some things that can wait until the next day? How do they go about building confidence and trust in their drivers when they first get them out there on the road? There's a ton of questions here that I can't wait to get into, and I'm very excited to have all 4 of these staff members in on the podcast today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk to the dispatch and driver manager side of things right here on episode 66 of the H&M Trucking Podcast.
From Omaha, Nebraska to whatever lane you're driving, this is the H&M Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Next up here on the H&M Trucking Podcast, Denny, I'm very excited about this as we have a full house, more people than we've ever had on the air at one time before, and it's going to be a great conversation. A couple newcomers to the podcast and a couple people that have been with us here before, so let's start out. Welcome to the podcast. Back for maybe a second or third time, I think. We've got Steve Walahoski, van dispatch manager for H&M Trucking. Steve, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here, brother.
Making his first appearance, we've got driver manager Terry Michaelson. Terry, I told you, man, back when I met you well over a year ago, you just give me enough time, I'll get you on this dang podcast.
Yep, you finally did.
Appreciate your time. Appreciate your time. We've also got Tim Gray, who's been here once before. He's a van regional dispatcher. Tim, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
No problem. And making her first appearance, we've got Lindsay Goodin. She is the regional division manager. Lindsay, appreciate your time.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So the reason we wanted to bring you all on today is because it's funny. Eve actually mentioned to us during a meeting, she said, you know, we love how our dispatchers and our drivers develop these great relationships. But she said, sometimes we just want to make sure that the drivers understand that there are some boundaries. We are kind of like a big family here, but much like you probably wouldn't call your mom drunk at 3:30 in the morning, sometimes you got to leave your dispatcher alone at certain hours and things like that. So really, I just wanted to bring on kind of a team of you that deal with this type of thing here, and you're talking to drivers, or you're setting drivers up for schedules, or you're working with them on other things. And the boundaries are very important. So Tim, I want to start with you since you're one of our dispatchers here, and I'm not going to put Terry on the spot by dropping the very first question in his lap on his very first appearance. So I won't do that to him. But the question that I have to just kind of start us off here for you, Tim, is how do you go about forming a bond with a new driver? What are some of the aspects you're looking to share with the driver right off the bat to kind of help build that relationship, establish the trust, and also establish some boundaries?
Oh, the boundaries are probably the toughest challenge right off the bat, to be completely honest. Talking to them a lot, calling them is probably the best way that I've been able to build my relationships with the drivers. You can't do nothing if you don't talk to anybody, whether it be like in the same Sarah messages or like giving them a phone call or something. The first couple of weeks that new drivers are on, when we send them out new loads and everything, I'll give them a call and make sure that we're walking through everything and seeing everything that we're supposed to correctly. And I think that kind of starts a good foundation for opening up that line of communication between each other and getting comfortable talking to each other about different things.
For sure. All right, Terry, that was the only break you're going to get. Now that question's coming right to you. What are some of the things that you put into practice for that?
Well, I just make sure when they first come to my board that I call them. And, I introduce myself and tell them a little bit about my background, but I also reinforce that we're a team. It's not me telling them what to do. So I just want to make sure that they understand we are a team, and then that I'm human too. So I'll make mistakes. So if you see something that is not accurate or whatever, please pick up the phone and call me. That's what a team does. So it's just not me telling them, go do this, this, this. So that's what I do when they first come to my board.
Gotcha. Now, Denny, I know that you operated with the same dispatcher for a long time at H&M, and I want to kind of explore this from the driver's side as well. You don't strike me, Denny, as the guy that would be calling at super late hours of the night or bugging somebody because your TV doesn't work at 4 a.m. You were a pretty regimented guy with your schedule, but how did you go about building the relationship that you eventually did build with Stacy, your longtime dispatcher when you were at H&M?
Well, when we first started, one of our very first conversations, I told her, I said, it's going to take a little while before you believe me. But if you'll just tell me where to be and when, and then just leave me alone, it'll get done. If I have a problem, I'll reach out. And she didn't take her long to realize that. And we have a good relationship. We still stay in touch today. And, I had her cell phone number, but I wasn't going to call her after hours or something. If I was going to be in town, I might send her a text message, said, hey, I'm going to be at the terminal overnight. Want to go out for a steak dinner at Outback or something? And occasionally we'd do that. So we got together as friends from time to time, but the professional relationship was that. It was a professional relationship, and she paid attention or honored my boundaries and vice versa.
Now, Steve, I want to go to you here. Do you find that you have a lot of drivers that are like Denny, where it's like, hey, I'll call you if I need you. You call me if you need me. Otherwise, just stay out of my business. I won't bug you. You don't bug me. Just trust that I've got this under control out here, and I'll keep you in the loop. Or do you find that you have more drivers that are kind of wanting to touch base, wanting to stay in touch, wanting to keep those lines of communication open very often?
Remember, my board is the new guy board. So they come right out of orientation and spend, a couple months with me. So my world's kind of different than the regular dispatchers because all my guys are brand new and they got a million questions. So I get calls after calls after calls. And I tell them right up front, that, hey, that's why you're spending time with me. I'm here to make it as painless as possible. And then also, once you think Steve's the greatest driver manager you ever had, he's going to throw your butt off his island. And then you're going to go like the Terry or one of the other driver managers. And I must do something okay, because a lot of guys never want to leave the board. But I just tell them right up front, I'm going to shoot straight with you. And if it sucks, I'm going to tell you it sucks. And they seem to appreciate that. So.
Yeah, I would think so. Just being as open and upfront and honest as possible with them about what's going on is, I feel like, a very good way to go about things. You're not going to make any friends by shading the truth in certain aspects just to try to make people feel better in the short term. That doesn't really prove to work. Lindsay, I want to go to you now as regional division manager. How different are the things about the regional than maybe OTR? Are you in touch more often, or is your team in touch more often with drivers? Is it less often since it's a shorter trip? And, I'm assuming some of these are dedicated accounts. They probably know exactly where they're going and coming from. How does it shape up for the regional division?
The biggest thing with regional is our drivers usually see a load every single day, and they're running during the week versus the weekends. And we do have special accounts. In our Southeast division, we have a master brands account, which it's driver assist, and there's multiple stops. So there's a lot that we have to cover when the drivers come in new with these drivers and what's expected of them as far as what the account requires. Tim, do you have anything else to add to that?
I think that we talk, or at least I talk to my drivers a lot more, or I would feel more often, because of the fact that we're seeing loads every day. Sometimes they'll get reloaded the night before or something, deliver in the morning, turn back and reload, and depending on the load, they can deliver again that evening, depending on where they're going. So there's a lot more opportunity for something to go wrong in the short term, because there's a lot more happening. Like, they're not on 1,000-mile loads from Georgia all the way to Omaha or anything like that. They're on 350 miles, 500 miles, North Carolina to Florida type deal. Mm-hmm. So I think that plays a big part in communicating a bit more. There's a lot more, like I said, something can go wrong. Pickup's going wrong, or hey, I'm in traffic. Atlanta sucks.
And we've heard that a few times on this podcast.
We get quite a lot of that.
Wait, when did that start?
Don't get Denny started. He's the most sharp-tongued when you get him going about Atlanta, Georgia, okay?
I remember on a podcast, Denny saying how he sneaks around on the back roads around Atlanta where he ain't supposed to be, so.
There was talk years ago about they're going to take US 27 and make that into an interstate bypass to bypass Atlanta. And then on the other hand, somebody else is talking about making the largest warehouse complex in the world east of Atlanta. 27's west, that's east. I'm like, would y'all get together on this shit?
I told you, don't get him going. That's just one. He's got plenty of examples, as most drivers do. Atlanta is it's the top three. I say it all the time on this podcast. Atlanta, Chicago, and anywhere inside of the north, south, east, or west borders of the state of California. Those are the places that the drivers don't want to go. We hear that all the time. Tim and Terry, I've got this one for you, and you kind of have already answered it a little bit, but I want you to think about it from the perspective of you've done your job as long as you have. You've got all the experience. If there was one thing that you could get through to a driver on day one that was maybe the most important aspect, or maybe something that takes drivers a long time to learn for whatever reason or establish, what would that one thing be? What is something you want the drivers to know about your job as a dispatcher that would help you do your job better?
Yeah. Oh, you put me on the spot. Okay. Oh, that's a very good question. Honestly,
they don't tell me that very often, so that means a lot to me too.
Well, there ain't very many of them.
I think if I could get through to my new guys that yes, it's okay to call when something goes wrong, and to communicate when they are late.
Ahead of time.
Yeah, before you're late, letting me know that you're late.
So you're saying that calling a couple hours late and telling you that I'm late doesn't do anything for you, Tim? Come on. Okay, so basically just it's more kind of in that same area as the trust that you're building, saying like, listen, if stuff falls off the rails, I'm here for you. Know that I'm here for you. But just the earlier that you can tell me the things that are going wrong, the more chance I'm going to have to fix it.
Right, because we'll go through, like, I run through the board probably 4 or 5 times a day and check up on everybody, but I'm not going to be able to do that the second that something's going wrong, and to report that and get behind it before it becomes a train wreck. Just
Gotcha.
like, oh, hey, this is going wrong. It saves so much time.
Gotcha. And how about for you, Terry? Is that different, or would it kind of be the same?
It's the same, but also, I'll have a driver. I know this is probably a stupid question. Well, hey, there's no stupid question. Pick up the phone. If you're having a question, you're having a doubt, I'd rather have you call me. We'll talk it through. And then that way you're not thinking about that as you're driving down the road, and not really concentrating on your driving. So there's no dumb question. Please pick up the phone, call me. We'll talk it through. Then that driver's more relaxed and he's safer on the road at that time.
For sure. Did you hear that, Steve? There's no stupid questions. There might be bad ones and uninteresting ones, but no stupid ones.
Hey, I want to throw something in here. One thing that Stacy and I did, or at least I did, is I know she's busy. I know all of y'all are busy. So if I had a question that wasn't pressing, as soon as she answered the phone, I'd say, Stacy, if you're busy, call me back. And she would. It might be 30 minutes. It might be, well, occasionally she'd forget, but usually it was within a couple hours she would call me back. If I'm going to ask about planning home time or something, that just really isn't pressing, and, her phone's on fire and she's dealing with a million things, that gave her the option instead of having to deal with me right now. I don't know if other drivers are doing that, but it seemed to help. At least I thought it did.
Well, I think it shows a consideration for somebody else's time, in that it's like she doesn't know what you're calling about. It could be anything from my truck exploded and it is now a pile of dust to, my TV's a little staticky and I'd like to do something about it. I feel like coming out and saying that right off the bat is all part of that honesty and upfront, straightforward behavior that you need to build a relationship like what drivers and dispatchers need to operate successfully, Denny. And if you could go ahead and start doing that with me, I wouldn't mind it. Just let me know that I could call you back at my own convenience, and I might forget once in a while, Denny. I'm warning you, but you didn't think that was funny. I don't think I answer the phone enough when Denny calls.
I don't think that's funny enough at all.
Now,
Hey, I got one here for y'all before you get into something else.
Yeah.
And I think it came in this morning. It was on the Facebook Friends page. Candace actually wrote this. And it shows somebody's watching these things. She said, my last couple of loads have been tight planning to the point I had difficulty making the appointments. On the recent podcast, it was said they're trying to plan so as not to let us sit, something which I'm sure we all agree is a good thing. But now I find myself struggling to get a buffer against traffic snarls and breakdowns. I don't believe I'm inefficient. I flip my clock when I need to. I do a straight 10 and no more when I need to. I'm just concerned that I'm suddenly failing. Anybody got advice? And there were quite a few responses, good ones. But I just, since this was timely and we were going to be talking to dispatchers, I thought, well, yeah, let's share that.
I feel if a driver feels like a load is too tight as far as their hours of service and things, they need to get with their dispatcher immediately so that it can be addressed with the load planners doing it. I mean, there are times where it may also be hard to find freight in those areas to get where we need them. So that could be the reason for the tighter loads. But if they're stressed and they don't think they can make it, let them know ahead of time before they even go pick that load up so it can be addressed.
That's a great answer. And yeah, I mean, it seems like, Denny, that's kind of what a couple of the people in the comment section did say is, as soon as you see it, say something. I see something, say something. It's like if we were out, having a beer in a place where we weren't supposed to be. Hey, if you see something, say something. Let me know so I can hide this thing. It's that type of thing. Advance notice as far in advance as possible to give the dispatchers enough time to fix it. And
just know too that there's so much going on. We don't know how a driver might be feeling that day. Maybe you didn't sleep good. Maybe you're tired, and say it up front just right away, especially with some of our big priority customers like Armstrong. We've been struggling with Armstrong on delivery times and stuff. If you look at it over, don't wait till you're halfway through it and then go, oh, you know what? I can't do this. Tell us up front. There's always more options up front than there is halfway through something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the load planning on the driver's side that Denny always talked about being so regimented about. It was a big plan made well before he ever started rolling down the pavement. It wasn't make the plan on the fly. It was make the plan, then start the truck and get moving.
Right.
Yeah, and it's also, I don't trust somebody else to make my plan, so I made it myself to make sure it's going to work.
Well, Denny, that doesn't speak to our trusting aspect here very much. Come on, I thought you and Stacy trusted each other.
Stacy's not the load planner, Papa.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay. Get my wires crossed. No, but it makes sense because I'm the same way. Even my wife, if I'm trying to do something and I know how to do it and she's going to take over for me for a few minutes, I find myself, I need to stay here and just help out because I'm the guy. I'm very much like that in a lot of aspects of my life. So I can see how it would be hard to put that in somebody else's hands and still feel like you're going to be handling it the way you want to handle it out there on the road. It makes a lot of sense. Now, this next one that I have written down, I'm sure you guys saw it in the email I sent to you, and it either unnerved you a little bit or hopefully you have some funny stories for us here. And we can leave names out of these. I think that's very important. But is there a story that any of you can share about when a driver maybe didn't exercise boundaries, called it at an appropriate time about something that didn't matter or something that was, not a life or death scenario, and maybe what the result was of this whole thing? Are there any stories like that come to mind for any of you guys?
I can remember back, I was on call one time. It was a Sunday morning. Phone rang at 3 a.m. in the morning. So I answered it as pleasantly as I could. And guy on the other end goes, hey, I was just wondering, can I take my dog on the truck with me when I come out of the house on Tuesday? I said, no, you can't take the dog. Well, I thought we had a pet policy. No, but you woke my ass up at 3 a.m. in the morning when you could have asked me on Monday morning in the office. Oh, I didn't think about it. So that's one thing, everybody out there. Here's one thing. A lot of guys, they don't call in because they're running late. I didn't want to wake anybody up. I didn't want to bother anybody. God damn, that's what that on-call's for. If you need something, you got to call. We need to know that kind of stuff up front. So everybody out there, make sure, if you need something, but make good decisions. Don't call like my example I just gave. But if you need help or you need something, by God, that's what it's there for. We all get it on call. We all know That's what it's for. We'd rather, maybe get a call that didn't necessarily matter than one that we should have gotten didn't.
For sure. Now, I have to ask, how long did you ground the dog for the bad decision of the driver, Steve?
He got to bring his damn dog.
Well, I had to ask because I know certain people, maybe even one of them joining us today, if you told him he couldn't have his dog in the cab, there might be a fight in the parking lot before.
Might be.
Yeah, Denny.
People like my dog more than they like me.
We still have pictures of your dog hanging around the office.
Yep. Little star, that one, and makes appearances on the podcast from time to time too. You guys, that's it's Gilly's an honorary member of the H&M Trucking Podcast here. Well, that's a fun story. Are there anybody else that has got one, Terry? I know you said you didn't have one. Lindsay, Tim, is there any of those stories that you might like to share? Just the reason I do this is not because I want to drag somebody through the mud for making that decision and calling. It's because if we can do it in a lighthearted way and kind of show what to do and what not to do, then maybe we can affect some change across. But it doesn't really sound like you guys have a lot of instances of drivers calling in all hours of the morning for meaningless things. I use the example of somebody calling at 3 a.m. to talk about a TV because another fleet that I work with, I was talking to a shop manager, and he said his phone rang at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, and the guy was like, well, my TV's not working. And he said, well, go ahead and pull the truck up in the lot, and I'll yank the TV out and throw it on the ground and stomp on it 100 times until you learn not to call me at 3:30 in the morning. So people can get upset in the moment, obviously, when stuff like this happens. And Steve, it sounds like you handled it pretty well. All you did was ground a dog for, just a theoretical hour there. But yeah, any other stories like that that come to mind, guys, that we can kind of teach lessons through? Tim, Lindsay, anything from you?
The only one that I can think of, it was one of my drivers, and it was a Sunday morning about 2 a.m. and a driver was wanting to do a cash advance because he owed some people some money. So first off, we don't do cash advances on the weekend, let alone at 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning. To owe people money. Whether or not it's going to save your kneecaps at the casino you're at or not, right?
Hard to drive with broken hands.
Right. Oh, that's funny. So, Denny, was there anything else that you had for these guys before we let them go? Because I know they're busy. They're taking time right out of the middle of a short week to come here and talk to us, but I don't want to get them out of the room here before you've asked all the questions you've got.
No, my comment would be to drivers, and it kind of goes along with this, not so much to your load planner or who's on call, but same thing would apply on the weekend, in my opinion. Unless you have a windshield wiper that's completely gone out, new windshield wipers can wait till Monday morning. You don't have to call, the repair service on the weekend, which I'm sure is way more expensive. I mean, yeah, if your truck doesn't run or something, obviously you have to deal with it. But if it's something minor like that, leave it till Monday. And same thing with dispatching. And I'm guessing you cover this in orientation and they forgot, but these guys may have come from one of the mega carriers that has 24-hour dispatch, and there's somebody sitting there to answer the phone at 3:30 in the morning, and they don't realize that when they call. But again, I wouldn't be real happy if you called me at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, we'll put that theory to a test one of these days, Danny. We'll see what you're like. I can record those calls too, so. And just
my phone is on Do Not Disturb, Bubba. I'm retired, remember?
Yeah, and I don't think it's actually, being over here on the West Coast, it's actually worse for me because I would have to be up at like 1:30. And I'm not going to bed and getting up at 1:30 to call you at 3 in the morning.
Aren't you just getting home at 1:30 in the morning?
Most of the time, my moonlight, Steve, nobody was supposed to know that I was a strip club DJ from 12 p.m. until... or 12 a.m. until 2 a.m. So, but you blew it up here on the show. That's what the podcast is for. We learn about each other. Yep.
I'm just the opposite. Last night I was headed to bed. My wife said it isn't even dark yet.
Well, that's the joys of retirement, Denny. You get to make those decisions now and nobody can tell you anything about it, right?
That's right. Well, I still had to get up at 6 a.m. to make her coffee and breakfast. Well, I didn't have to, but I do. So anyway, enough said.
Enough said. Denny's a great guy, and I moonlight as a strip club DJ. What else did we learn today on this episode? No, you guys.
Sunblock on your feet. That's
yeah.
what I can tell you.
Denny's got a really bad top of the foot sunburn right now. So if you're noticing any irritability, that might be where it comes from.
I think I'm just naturally irritable. Thank
Well, you found a good spot, buddy. I think that we've got pretty much everything that we need here. I'm going to go ahead and do this for you guys because I let everybody do this before they jump off the show with us. We'll start with you, Steve, van dispatch manager. Anything that you want to say to any of the drivers, other staff, family members, friends that might be listening, the floor is yours.
In closing, to all the drivers, hey, remember, you might have hell days out there once in a while. These driver managers in here have hell days every day. They got so many things going on. Just have some patience and understanding, and we'd appreciate that. That's the biggest thing I could ask for.
Well said. How about you, Terry?
Yeah, it's going off of what Steve says. They keep putting more on us to do here in the office. So yeah, just be patient with us. There's a lot of times I'd leave here at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm calling the driver on my phone on the way home because I told him I'd get back to him. So, just be patient. We'll get back to you.
Absolutely. It's a great dispatch crew at H&M. I've talked to enough drivers to know you guys get very high marks from the drivers, and I think that that's something that needed to be mentioned here, and sorry for saving it all the way till the end. I would expect doing the job that I do, I would hear drivers complain about dispatchers. I don't hear that. I really don't. In fact, I hear drivers compliment their dispatchers a lot. And I think you guys are doing a great job over there. Obviously, from a guy that doesn't drive a truck, my opinion, and 50 cents won't buy you a cup of coffee. But I just want it to be known. Tim, on to you. Anything that you'd like to say before we let you go?
Obviously, I got to kind of piggyback off of what Steve and Terry just said. But also, we appreciate the hell out of the drivers. Just straight up. They do a lot. They do a lot for us. I know that they got to deal with a lot out there on the road as well when they're not having to deal with us. And man, we just appreciate y'all.
Well said again. Lindsay, your turn.
Stole my word, Tim. I was just going to say how much we do appreciate the drivers and all the hard work that they do. We know that they run out there hard on the roads, and times can be difficult out there for them, and we just appreciate them.
Awesome. Well, Lindsay, Tim, Terry, and Steve, we can't thank you guys enough for coming in here on short notice and doing this podcast episode with us. Terry, Lindsay, it was okay, right? This first time, it wasn't too bad. Like, we didn't kick you into the pool and you sank or anything, right? You did a pretty good job.
It was fun.
Lindsay almost passed out.
I did. I'm a little stressed. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I when I saw you fanning yourself, I thought maybe it was just hot in the room. I didn't know that heat was emanating from you, just being a little nervous, but you did fantastic. No reason to sweat about it anymore, all right? You're all done for the day. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you know what? I give you the authority to go home. Just make sure to not say anything to James on the way out the door. You'll be fine.
Gotcha.
Hey, Marcus said I can go home.
See you guys.
Yeah, actually, you can say whatever you want to James. Just don't say that, Tim, and you should be fine. Okay? All right, y'all. Thanks for being here.
See you later, buddy.
See you, buddy.
Hey, thank you.
Well, Denny, this interview is going to be a fun one, and I already know that because we finally are getting through to the other side of a coin that we see on this podcast all the time. She's actually instrumental in this podcast, and that is Eve Essary. If it wasn't for Eve and all the information she gives us and all the interviews that she hunts down, and another person, Sherry Vogler as well, if it weren't for those two, we wouldn't have a lot to talk about on this podcast. But this particular interview actually came to us, Denny, independent of Eve. And in fact, we might even be surprising Eve as she listens to this right now because we have her husband, Jeremy Essary, on the line. Jeremy, really appreciate you being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Now, does Eve brag to you about how big of a podcast star she is?
She's very humble, which you probably find a little hard to believe, but she is. She's a humble lady, and I'm proud of her. She does very well, and I listen to a little bit of her on podcast, and man, she does such a great job, and I'm always proud of her.
She does. She does a phenomenal job. And the one thing I love about Eve is that she is willing to do the dirty work if she has to. You know, we bring her on here for her segment, Laying Down the Law with Eve, and it's typically all about telling the drivers what they're doing wrong and how to correct it, and she's great at it. She handles it with such grace. I have to imagine when you screw up at home that she kind of is the same way there with you, Jeremy. She's very graceful when she handles your screw ups at home.
We'll go with yes. She absolutely has no problem laying down the law at home. So it's yeah. With grace. We'll just say with grace also, yeah.
And you guys, I mean, you got a full house, right? So she's got to have a little bit of grace every now and then, otherwise she'd tear her hair out.
We just got back from vacation yesterday, and while we were there, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he made the comment he would have no idea how to function in life without his wife. And, I was like, I wouldn't know how to pay bills. I wouldn't know how to feed children. I don't know how she does what she does every day and works hard and does a great job at work and then come home and be a wife and a mother. And she's just an awesome person.
Well said. Denny, I saw you shaking your head in agreement with not knowing how to adult without your wife. Is that true for you as well?
I can get by with that. I take care of bills and stuff, but yeah, without Dawn, yeah, I'd be kind of lost too.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Ashley is definitely my better half, and that is it's the stuff that's detail oriented that she does so well at that I don't know whether it's my caveman brain or what the deal is with it, but I just after a few details that I deem unnecessary that somebody else thinks are important, I tend to really tune out and just get frustrated. So it's really important for me to have somebody like that around. And sounds like it is for you too, Jeremy. And we just want to say thanks to Eve one more time here before we get into what we're really here to talk about. Because as you said, man, you put her up there on a pedestal for good reason, Jeremy. She's a great lady.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So I didn't tell anybody what your job title is yet, because for those of you that don't know, Jeremy is indeed an H&M Trucking employee as well. What do you do for the company, Jeremy?
Well, I am a Shag Driver. Anything that comes in over the road, I wouldn't say everything, but a lot comes in here and gets dropped at our yard. And between me and Stu, which is the other Shag Driver, we will hook onto them loads. We'll go deliver those loads. So those OTR guys and gals can get back out there and turn and burn and make money because miles is money, right? And that's their job, and that's what they do. We also preload a bunch of loads so they can come in, drop one, hook a loaded, and get back on the road and turn miles.
Now, I understand that there might be a name change in the title here, maybe on the horizon. Is this something that you're pushing for? Because I'll be honest with you, Denny and myself did not expect for you to say that you were a Shag Driver. We expected a different version of the job title. What were we expecting?
Well, when I text Sherry, I was just joking. She's one of my friends. And I was like, hey, we should do a podcast. Have me on it. And instead of calling me a Shag Driver, I refer to me as a Ride Commodities Relocation Engineer. So, pop, make it pop a little, So I had fun with that. And I really never thought in a million years I'd be here talking to you guys. But I got to be honest about something. When you text and say, hey, you interested in this? I had this illusion of sitting in a studio with this cool swishy boom mic thing and monitors, and I'm sitting alone in my truck eating Cheetos. So it's nothing at all like I pictured it. But I'm here and I'm happy to be here.
Just because they add the word engineer to the title doesn't mean it makes it a cushy gig there, Jeremy. But
there's no cushy seat, leather chair I'm sitting in or nothing. So it's just me and Cheetos.
Well, I'm glad that you're at least there with something of comfort. It sounds like maybe the Cheetos are a frequent passenger in the cab there. So
good thing we don't have him in the studio. He'd have orange fingers all over everything.
Probably right on that. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I love the idea of thinking of more complicated titles, more complex titles for the things that we do. I'm a podcast host, but you've given me this little, I don't know, I guess some motivation to see if I can make it sound just a little bit better. So I think I'm going to go with podcast content director of Help me out, Denny. Podcast content director of speech. What do you think?
Okay. Mine's longer.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, let's hear it.
Here's what I came up with. I'm a semi-sequestered, barely athletic, former transportation professional who serves as chief cook and bottle washer, household cleaning launderer, canine companion, and emotional support person, as well as a part-time podcast sidekick and full-time smartass.
I think you win.
Totally win.
I think you win, Denny. Hands down. Now, let me ask you this. If you were to show that list to your wife, how many of those would she cross off and say, wait, that's my job?
No, I think she'd agree with every bit of it.
Yeah, especially right there at the end, the full-time smartass.
Yep. She actually does cook. It's kind of like role reversal in our house. If I take something out on the grill or the smoker, it's going to be burned or raw. But she can cook outside. Like last night, she made these, handmade beautiful burgers with cheese in them and some jalapeno poppers.
Ooh.
But inside, I do most of the cooking. If she's going to cook anything on the stove or in the oven, she's got to follow a recipe. My grandmother taught me how to just pull stuff out of the refrigerator and the cabinet and make dinner. So I do most of the cooking. Always have.
Well, and that's why you're the director of Bill's Big Rig Cafe as well, which I feel like is something that was left out of you. Food show, I guess, producer, creator, extraordinaire. Let's just add as many words to your title as we can, Denny. I feel like if we can get somewhere between 100 and 150 words in your job title, we'll be doing our job.
Well, I looked up retired in the thesaurus, and all I came up with was like old timer and elderly and feeble. And I'm like, no, I don't claim any of those.
Not this guy that's out there running 5 miles in the Texas heat every morning. I'm sorry, but I'm glad you don't claim any of those. Jeremy, I actually had another question for you that will take us back a little bit to your fantastic wife, Eve. Do you guys get to see each other very much during the workday, or is this kind of one of those jobs where, yeah, you work at the same company, but really you don't have anything to do with each other until you get home?
Generally, we ride together to work, and then I'll get in my truck and do my thing. I hardly ever get to the office. I don't, that's kind of her domain, and I let her do her thing, and I don't get involved in that. I wouldn't understand 99% of what happens therein, So I do my thing, and she does hers, and then at the end of the day, she'll swing by and pick me up, and we'll go home and be parents and do our thing and put work behind us a little bit for the day.
That's great. And being able to put that work behind you is a huge part of not wanting to tear each other's hair out once you're home and dealing with the full house. Now, that question, I'll be honest with you, I only asked it to set up this question. As we've established, Eve is, in fact, your HR manager. Have you ever been called into the HR office for any disciplinary reasons? And if so, how did that go?
No, I never have. And she tries to limit disciplinary, not because I'm pretty perfect, let's be honest.
Sure.
But, right. So she limits her disciplinary actions, and that rolls off to another person. There's conflict of interest, and, I don't want to be a smart ass to her in her office. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me or whatever. So, knock on wood. I've got a lot of trouble during my tenure here, but, no, that's kept pretty apart in that aspect.
Because I never have worked with my wife before. Obviously like working together on something, but never worked for a company or a job where she was there and I was there as well. And I think if she had the ability and that was to come to pass, she would fire me immediately because I never shut up. We've established that, and I don't shut up at home either. So it's a lot to be around me for an entire day. Denny, how do you think you would fare working with your wife at the same company? Has that happened before? I should ask that question first.
Well, strange. We met because we worked for the same company.
Okay.
And I avoided, asking her out or anything, even though I was immediately attracted to her because, as the old rancher says, dog don't shit where he eats. And I've honestly seen a lot of these inter-office romance things go south, and then it gets bad. It's really difficult to work together. So we didn't actually work in the same building. it was back in my radio days years ago, and we had a 7-station cluster, and 3 of the stations were in one building, 4 of the stations were in another building across town. She worked in the one across town. So as the year went on, I kept finding excuses to go over there and look at this pretty lady. And I'm glad I finally did ask her out. But yeah, I was reluctant because, like I said, I've seen it go bad so many times. But luckily, 20-something years later, we're still going strong.
Well, I'm sure she's glad that you finally got the gumption to ask her out, too, because that face print you were leaving on her office window was starting to get awkward, Denny. I'm sure of it. Now, Jeremy, did you and Eve meet before your job took place at H&M? Did you guys meet on the job? How'd you guys come together?
Well, we met years and years and years ago. I rodeoed, and, she was married previously, and I knew her husband at that time. We kind of rodeoed together a little bit, and we were friends, and then relationships on both our parts went different ways. And, I was always drawn to her. She's beautiful, and she's intelligent and funny. And it just worked out over, years of me begging to have her marry me, and I wore her down, basically, is what happened.
Yep.
And one day she just like, fine, we'll get married. And, we've been together a lot of years, and I'm not going to throw numbers out because I'd be wrong, but I think it's 14 years married, together like 20, and she was through, there through my OTR days and, all the things. And I really couldn't ask for a better partner.
Well, she's fantastic. I can definitely agree with that in working with her as much as we do. And I think it's really cool. I have to ask you, though, what beat you up more, rodeo or OTR?
Oh, my goodness. In different ways, they both kind of did. Physically, it was rodeo and toll on your body and, the doctor bills and chasing, winning and money and buckles. And, but OTR was just, in the same aspect, kind of hard because you missed everything and dirt days. And, so it was more of a inside kind of pain, or you couldn't be home for special occasions, and you had kids when they were young would call and, Dad, I got a softball game. Are you going to make it? And, I'm in Texas somewhere. And, so it was different, but, truly glad those years of, missing those things are behind me.
Now, Denny, you used to work for a country radio station, so rodeo is something pretty close to your heart. If you had to guess, just from talking to Jeremy for the short amount of time that you've talked to him, what would you think his event in the rodeo was?
First, I'd ask how big he is.
5'9", 145-ish.
You're riding something, broncs and bulls.
That's what I thought. What were you riding, Jeremy?
It's usually the little scrawny guys that are riding those.
It's the little ones that were sticky like me. So, yeah, I rode bulls for a lot of years.
You know I rodeoed?
Did you? Don't tell me you roped because I don't want to hear about it.
Nope, I wasn't a roper, and I only rodeoed once. My parents wouldn't let me. All my friends were, well, I say all, a lot of my friends were doing it when I was in high school, and they wouldn't let me. They wouldn't sign off to let me do it. So years and years later, I was in Austin, Texas, and I decided I want to. I mean, I was 30 years old or close to it. And I started looking. I looked at the Old Timers Rodeo and Sheriff's Posse Rodeo, and I was trying to find somebody that would let me do it. What I wanted to do was steer dog. And I finally found a rodeo that would let me. And if you've been around rodeo, you probably know who Leon Coffey is.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Leon's brother, Lynn, was a steer dogger, champion steer dogger. And he agreed to teach me. And we did. We met on a number of occasions, and he taught me how to do it. And the night of the big event, the deal was I was doing it for publicity. But in return for me publicizing the rodeo and being willing to get out there and make a fool out of myself if I failed, they were going to give me one of those great big tombstone for a you-know-what Montana silversmith buckles. So anyway, the night of the event, I said, well, which horse am I using? He goes, you're going to use mine. That's what Lynn Coffey told me. I'm like, okay, well, I get him back in the chute. Then what do I do when the gate opens? He goes, just hang on. The horse knows what to do. So anyway, I did it. I got my buckle. And the rodeo that finally agreed to let me do it was the Cleo Hearn Invitational Rodeo for Cowboys of Color. I was the light colored one.
Yeah, Denny, you represented a very specific part of that spectrum, I assume.
So there's my rodeo story.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So I don't know, Jeremy, if you saw this recently, actually just right over here in my neck of the woods at the Sisters Rodeo, which is a very popular rodeo here in the state of Oregon, a bull named Party Bus actually just jumped the fence and got out into the concessions and was running wild throughout the rodeo grounds. Did you see that viral video?
I absolutely did. It blew my mind. It was absolutely crazy.
I've never seen anything like it. I've not been to nearly as many rodeos as you and Denny have, but we used to go to the little rodeo in our town every year when I was growing up, and I sat in the front row more times than I could count as a kid and never saw a bull even get close to thinking about jumping the fence. But that video will remind you just how easy it is for them to do it. I mean, that bull went right over the fence with no effort. And since I have two what we could call rodeo experts here with me, can you guys please tell me about the trappings of wearing red to a goddamn rodeo? Because both of the people that this bull hit once it got out into the concessions were wearing bright red shirts. And I thought that was very interesting, Jeremy. Tell me about it. Are bulls actually that transfixed on the color red?
I honestly, I don't know. I wouldn't think so, but it could be that, they pick up on that color. But, just take a step back, and we're talking about how that bull jumped out. Denny can probably testify. Back in, let's say 20 years ago, the bulls were different. Now it's genetics and it's science. And these bulls are they're athletes and they're nuts. And nothing I would ever attempt to get on again in my life is these pro rodeo bulls they have out now. They're nuts.
So do you think that they're, over and above what you were riding, you think that they're worse and harder to stay on than what you used to ride?
Absolutely. I mean, if you tune into the PBR or PRCA event or something like that, I mean, I watch them. I'm like, there's no way. I mean, I got on a lot of ranked bulls in my life and, knocked my butt in the dirt and drugged me around. And, and if they were bad then, but I watch them now, and it's just the science and everything that goes into mixing strings of different mothers. And I don't even know what it is, but yeah, definitely a different caliber of animal.
What's the worst you ever got hurt?
Oh, goodness. There were so many. I wasn't very good. Probably I was in Kansas City, and they brought a bull in that nobody's ever been on. Big old red bull, horns down to, tilted down. I'm like, well, shoot, I'll get on it, And I lasted probably 2 seconds, and he spun me in the dirt and jumped on my neck and my back, and really messed me up. It was not worth the 2 seconds of getting on there. I mean, it was months recovery.
That makes my back hurt.
Yeah. I can't even imagine, man. I've seen one bull rider got 2 hooves right in the middle of the chest and collapsed both of his lungs at one of the rodeos I was at. And almost killed him. They had to land the life flight helicopter right there at the fairgrounds and take him away. And it's just a real dangerous sport you used to be a part of, man. And I'm sure that was part of the thrill of it, right? Every bull rider's got a little tick of crazy in there that you're looking for that thrill, and that's why you love doing this so much. Is that accurate?
Definitely. It was an adrenaline high. It was a thrill. I don't know who quoted it, but somebody said it was like having everything wild and free right in the palm of your hand. And that's what it was, because you nod your head, that chute gate's open. You don't hear crowds. You don't hear anything. You hear hoofs, right? You hear a hoof beating the ground, and it's a feeling that I can't really describe any better than that. It was just an adrenaline high from the first time I did it to the last time.
Eve might even call it the second most exciting 8 seconds of your life, huh, Jeremy?
3 or 4 seconds of a life, probably. I mean, I don't get off and throw my hat in the air anymore, so that's good.
So have you ever heard of rodeo sex?
I haven't.
They might have to edit this, but they're magic. They can do it if they need to. But rodeo sex is when you and your lady are right in the middle of it. You say something to the effect of, your sister's better, and then try to hang on for 8 seconds.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'm anti-violence in the bedroom, so I can't do that type of thing. It gets my ass kicked. Well, this is great, man. I've had a lot of fun talking to you here, Jeremy. I've heard so much about you and talking to Eve over the months that we've been doing this podcast. And I don't know if she ever told you, but I told her way back when that if you guys could handle a 9th kid, that I would gladly take that spot and be like your honorary child. I'm close to 40, by the way. It should be known that, so I'm sort of self-sufficient in some aspects, but what do you think now that because you told us at the beginning of this, I was taking your podcast virginity. Now that I've done so, did I earn spot as the honorary 9th child in the Essary household?
Hey, bring your ass on. I won't even know you're there. Okay. I've had so many kids. I tune it out. I wouldn't remember your name like I do with the rest of my kids. And I would just, if I needed something, I would just say, hey, you. And then I would hope you would answer because I would completely blank it out.
Perfect. Well, as long as you'll come to one of my beer league softball games, that's all I care about, Dad.
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. We've got Commodities Relocation Engineer Jeremy Essary on the line. Thank you so much for being here, Jeremy. Anything you want to say to anybody that might be listening, whether it be the company, your family, or anything like that before we let you go?
Well, my wife, I just hope I did her proud here today, and I didn't embarrass her, but I probably did. So I'll hear about that later. It is truly a pleasure working for H&M. I enjoy the people I work with and around. We have a very good shop crew that gets trucks in and out, and trailer crew that gets trailers in and out. So I enjoy what I do every day, and I have Amy Meyer is my new dispatcher. She does a great job. Mitch Rozonki, he was my old dispatcher. He's a great guy. I really have no complaints about what I do, and they treat me well, and I try to do my best for them.
Well said, man. And we love a good shout out on this show. So thank you for bringing up a couple of names that I don't think we've heard before on this podcast. So always happy to honor the great employees of H&M Trucking. Jeremy Essary, you take care of yourself. Be safe out there. And we will get you back on here again. This was a lot of fun.
It was truly a pleasure talking to you both. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Bye-bye.
Great stuff there from Jeremy. Denny, I love having guys that don't necessarily, we talk to the guys from the staff. We talk to the dispatchers. We talk to the managers. We talk to Eve and Sherry. We talk to the drivers. And there's a lot of ancillary positions out there that we might not talk about on this podcast day in and day out that are crucial to the company. And I know that you've got some thoughts on that, and I'm just going to step the hell out of the way and let you say your piece.
Well, first of all, like Jeremy said, the fact that they can go and get a load and then just put it in the drop yard, one of the drop yards. And, a driver can come in, drop his empty trailer. That's clean. Thank you very much. And pick up the loaded trailer, check the bills, be on his way. He doesn't have to spend hours waiting on that load. So that is fantastic. That is one of the great things about H&M. But for the Shag drivers in particular, I wanted to say thank you for Jeremy and his cohorts, because I've been to a lot of yards where these guys seem to take pride in putting the trailers like 6 inches apart, and you can't get it out of there. The yard dog trucks, they have a lift on them where they can lift that trailer up and move it. They don't have to crank the landing gear, but the rest of us do. And if they stack those so close together that you can't get in between them and get the handle out and crank the landing gear, you're dragging the landing gear, maybe bending the landing gear, just trying to get it forward a few feet so that you can crank those landing gear up. I've never had that problem with these guys. I know they come in, and particularly the Des Moines lot, they go in and they straighten those things out. But they don't, they do leave enough space for you. So thank you for a job well done, because drivers come in there in a hurry. They get them crooked, and Jeremy probably goes, damn it, here we go again. And he spends half hour or more straightening the trailers out. I know these guys do it. So thank you.
So would you say that would you say that the Commodities Relocation Engineers are some of the unsung heroes of H&M Trucking?
At H&M, yes. Other places, they're a pain in the ass.
Well, that's what it's all about here at H&M Trucking, hiring good employees to do good work. And we get examples of that every single day on this podcast. And it's one of the things that makes it so much fun for us to get to do this, Denny. If we were doing this for a company where everybody hated each other and nobody got the job done and everybody just left work for everybody else, we would never get to have fun and laugh and joke on this podcast. And I feel like we get to do a lot of that because of the people that we're working with.
Yes, sir. I agree with that.
Well, that's going to put a bow on episode 66 of the H&M Trucking Podcast. It's been a pleasure having everyone here. I want to extend a special thank you to Steve Walahoski, Lindsay Goodin, Tim Gray, who am I missing here? Terry Michaelson, and of course, Jeremy Essary. Those were our guests this week, and great stuff from all of you. Love to have you all back. And I do want to tell Lindsay, if she's listening, I know it was a little bit nerve-wracking in that first interview, but she did great. I saw her actually when the camera was off her. She was kind of fanning herself. She was a little nervous. If any of you are thinking about doing this podcast and the nerves are what's holding you back, give Denny and I a shot. Come in here, chat with us. We have a lot of fun. Everybody leaves with a smile on their face, and we're always looking to talk to more employees of H&M Trucking and just kind of, document what you do. Hear about the job, hear about your coworkers, and all the other good things that go on over at H&M Trucking. I will remind you to please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't yet. It's free. All you got to do is click the button. It's going to let you know when we release a new episode, which of course is every Wednesday at 5 a.m. Central Standard Time. And I think that's about it for me. Denny, anything left from you today before we wrap it up?
No, Hoss, let's get together again next week and do it better.
I like
or
that.
Do it again.
Hoss is a good one. That might have to be a CB handle for me. All 5'9" of me. All right, y'all. It's the H&M Trucking Podcast. Stay fresh, cheese bags. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the H&M Trucking Podcast. Please leave a review, subscribe, and connect with Marcus over at the H&M Trucking social media channels. And if you're considering a job at H&M, find us at hmtrucking.com. Until next time, stay safe and ahead of the curve drivers.